Hi, Troy Love.
Hello, how are you, Tammy?
I'm doing well. I was just mentioning before we started the recording that I feel like I always refer people to the Finding Peace workbook, but it feels like more in the last week or two in particular. So I don't know if that means I'm just tuning in more to people's wounds or if I'm just bumping up against more people that I think it could benefit. I don't know, but I'm grateful that there's a resource for people to
Thank
be
you.
able to look at things in a different way.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
So we don't have any questions yet. So what shall we chat about that will be?
Yeah, so thank you everyone who's here. We have about 20 people here so far. Obviously, you can see us, we can't see you, but we love to interact with you. So how I like to do this is rather than just diving into some discussion, is if you have a question that you would like to ask, the easiest way for us to moderate that is if you use the question and answer icon. Depending on what device you're on, it's somewhere, but it's usually at the bottom of your screen somewhere. There's a Q&A button. There's also a chat button. I have both windows open. Tammy does too, so we can get an idea of what you want, but it's easier for us to be able to moderate the question and answers if you ask them in the in question and answer version versus the chat. But whatever works. So we open it up to questions. Like Tammy was saying, I work primarily on trauma as it relates to what I call attachment wounds. And for me, the foundation of addiction is these attachment wounds, and we've been trying to find ways to resolve those wounds through all the different kinds of ways of numbing, including sex addiction, can be substance abuse, it can be food, and it can also be how we relate in other ways, prodependent behaviors. That we don't use the term codependent here because but the ways in which we try to draw the other person into in maybe unhealthy ways as a way of trying to deal with our pain. All of that is connected to what I call these attachment wounds, and if we can find a healthier way to heal those wounds, there isn't as much of a need to numb them or engage in those unhealthy behaviors as before. So that's the primary principle of that.
And we do have a question, but we were talking right before we started too about, abandonment wounds. And even with the knowledge of like, this is what's going on, like still being able to go, this is what's going on and not, go down the rabbit hole with it, to be able to take the pause, go, yes, this is what's going on. I mean, it's so helpful. And in the moments when we can do that, it's a game changer, but it isn't like, oh, now I know this. And so now I'm automatically going to do it right every single time and live this high Zen order life. So,
Right? Wouldn't that be
so we,
amazing?
yes,
I'm
we
still
have to give
looking for
ourselves
that
grace. Yeah.
magic pill for that.
Yes. No
It doesn't
magic
make
pills.
it
Yeah.
doesn't
So
exist, just so you
exactly.
know.
So the question is, this is my first time here. Thank you for being here. So glad you're here. Gosh, as much as I understand about love addiction, trauma, attachment, etc., I'm still in deep grief and very raw about being ghosted by someone I've known for 15 years. I guess time is key. Stages of grief, healing the deeper wound, what to do. I don't know that I'll ever not hurt over this. I feel the grief.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
So there's two wounds, particularly that are connected to what's happening with you. One is betrayal, because it sounds like in your situation you knew this person for 15 years, and then the second is abandonment. So they just disappeared from your life, and you don't understand why. There was probably not any closure for that, and so it leaves you with unanswered questions. And obviously there's the pain of the loss, there's the wound of loss too. There's six wounds: loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and abuse. And the next person is asking what's the difference between those. We'll get to that in a second. But I'm hearing that those three wounds in particular, loss, betrayal, and abandonment, are really being hit. And because of the abandonment, there's not a lot of answers. And what our brain tends to do is put in answers. It will feed it. The shadows of shame will they love to explain to you why the person ghosted you. And there's all kinds of those, like, it was your fault, you messed up, you did something wrong, there's something wrong with them, they're crazy. Like, there's all kinds of things that those shadows of shame will start to put into the holes, because you just don't know. And so part of that lack of closure, I think, exacerbates the wound and makes it harder to heal. So you identified that maybe time will be the healing. Time in and of itself does not heal a wound. Just we can go for a long period of time and not have any healing. What does tend to help is time accompanied with compassion, and and doing work and reaching out and getting connection with other people, rewiring or rewriting those negative core beliefs that may be attached to some of these wounds, to recognize that even though this person left and I don't know why they left, I'm still enough. I matter. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of connection. I'm worthy of compassion. And as we start to rewrite and change those core beliefs to a place of healing, it helps us become a little bit more vulnerable. I would imagine that right now, if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't want to be vulnerable. I wouldn't want to reach out to anybody. I wouldn't want to try to connect with other people, because I don't want to get lost and abandoned and betrayed again. But when I start to connect with that I'm enough and I matter and I'm worthy of love and life is worth experiencing joy with, I might be willing to put myself out there again, reach out to some people. So it is more than just time. It is work to go through the grieving process, as well as also giving yourself time to express the sadness, to cry. I think I said in the last time we met that I got on Spotify and found a playlist of sad songs about a month ago when I was super sad, and I just played them and I cried, and it was actually, I felt better after so I allowed some of the emotion to come out. So it's not just time, it's actively caring for the wound as well.
Yeah, and I want to give you a couple other resources. So on intherooms.com, Sophia Caudle has several grief groups. They're free, and I would invite you to pop into those. I think you might find those to be useful and supportive. And then from the betrayal standpoint, we have a betrayed partners group on today at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. So Wednesdays, and there's one tomorrow morning too. There's a number of them. So on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, which is probably how you found us, you'll see a number of resources. So lean into those. I feel the grief. I understand the hurt. I understand the betrayal. I always hate when people like ghost. Like, I mean, closure for a relationship, for whatever reason, is just so much more adult and whatever. But I know this is painful. So, and then the next question, as you mentioned, is what's the difference between rejection and abandonment?
So rejection is the wound that happens when people tell you that you're not enough. So a classic example that many of us dealt with is on the playground when we had the two captains playing a sport, and the captains would pick teams, and then there was always some poor kid, me, who was picked
Me
last,
too.
right?
Or next to
That's
last. We might have been competing for it. Yeah.
right. That's a rejection. Being told you're not wanted, there's something wrong with you, you are a horrible person, and not in an adult version, not being selected for a job that you felt really qualified for. Those are some examples of rejection where you're being told by others that you are not enough in some capacity or another. Abandonment is when people walk out of your life and they just aren't there anymore, and you don't understand, similar to what that last person was speaking about, is um, gone. No, I don't understand where they left. I don't understand where they went. They're not responding to my calls. They're not responding to my texts and other things, and they're just gone. And I don't understand that. From a child perspective, like a lot of individuals who've had a father or a mother just walk out of their life. They're not there anymore. They were there and now they're gone. It's a little bit different than all. They died, like that can still feel like abandonment for sure, but abandonment is like they made a conscious choice to leave, versus a lost wound is they didn't really choose that they died, they had a disease or got old or something, so they didn't consciously choose to leave you, but abandonment they did.
So, and you mentioned with the previous one, like both rejection and abandonment, could be at play. So they can be at play at the same time. So,
Yeah, you can have more than one wound being activated.
and I was thinking too, when you're talking about time, if they're not healed, they are like, like with wound care, like with physical wound care, like there's a whole process and they go in and they clean things out and everything. And otherwise it festers. And so I really, I mean, it's gross, but it's also one of those, I think it's a really good analogy for what happens if we don't attend to those deep wounds. All of that's just going to infect our entire life, and we don't deserve or need that. So I love that people are here and asking questions and looking to heal these wounds. So this, I think, is a continuation of the first one. So he did this to me because of his attachment trauma. Now I'm greatly traumatized by the person I suited up and showed up for and tried to attach to, and I have experienced him abandoning me. I am already had great trauma and I worked so hard to heal from. It's no win. Why would I trust and move forwards with him? He doesn't see my pain as well.
So thank you. Because I don't know all the particulars of your situation, I'm going to try and give you um, a little higher level perspective about that. And obviously, what we talk about, please don't consider as medical or mental health advice. But I'll do my best to attach that. So, the first part was he did this to me because of his attachment trauma, and there was a question mark at that. So, did he? Possibly. I don't know. But oftentimes we do what we do because of our attachment trauma, because we are in pain. And so we will run away. We will fire people from our lives. We will blame, we can do a lot of stuff that comes from our own trauma. And if we're not aware of that, if we're not aware that, hey, I'm actually behaving this way because of my trauma, I can cause some serious harm to other people. I was saying just before the meeting started that some of my abandonment wounds have been stirred up. One of the things that's happening is in April, I'm doing a retreat in Prescott, and one of the staff members, who's my best friend, he's like saying, "Hey, buddy, I'm not sure I can go," and immediately I'm like, dude, you've gone with me every time we've done this thing. And immediately my abandonment wounds being stood up. Now, the logical part of me says he's not in a good place. He's struggling with his own stuff. I understand that. My wounded part is like, how can you leave me? Please don't leave me. And so that's kind of the struggle that I think we have sometimes, is like in this situation. There's part of you that probably recognizes this person was hurting and was doing what they could do, and I can logically wrap my head around that. And then there's the wounded part that's like, how could you do that to me? I have suited up, like you said, I've suited up, I've showed up, I've tried to be there for you, and you just left. And that rips open those wounds incredibly. And so then it leaves us bleeding on the floor, and we are trying to we're asking ourselves, you're asking yourselves, why would I trust him or move forward with him? Well, you might not trust him because he abandoned you. You may not be willing to give him a second chance, and that could be a normal, healthy response, by the way. What I'm wondering more about is, why would I trust and move forward with anybody? And that's That's part of what our shadows of shame. And you've not been here before, but you may not be familiar with that. But shame has these messages that it talks to us. That shame berates us and tells us that we're not enough and it's our fault and it's never going to get any better and you can't trust anybody and it's going to be awful. And shame actually makes the wound more intense. And so not only are we trying to do wound care, but we really have to also develop some shame resilience and recognize how shame is sabotaging our ability to actually take care of our wounds so that healing can take place. And so, as you identified, he doesn't see your pain. He probably doesn't. If he's wounded in his own place, he probably can't do that. But that doesn't mean that you aren't in pain. It doesn't mean that your wounds aren't real. And so then it's like, well, I see them and they hurt. And I want to find other people who can see them and can provide compassion for me. And so, how do I take care of this wound and heal it with people I do trust? I know it's hard when this betrayal wound is so raw, but that's part of the journey that I would imagine you're going to have to go through as you're trying to heal this wound.
So the next question, this is another first-time person. Thank you. I am understanding that I have deep-rooted childhood attachment wounds trauma. I am working on those, but I am finding that I may have developed a different attachment wounds from being in a relationship with my husband who has narcissistic behaviors, manipulation, gaslighting, and been betrayed. It sounds like he's an addict. I am still with him. We are very early in figuring out what to do. I don't mean to, like, that sounded a little snippy. That was no way meant to be snarky or anything. You have my deep empathy. Like, the betrayal is horrible, but I mean, all the things you just listed, I was like, oh, sounds like an addict. So, okay. My question is, how do I work on both? I find it very difficult to differentiate if I'm getting triggered from my childhood wounds or from the wounds from my current relationship. How do I heal them both at the same time?
Excellent question. Thank you so much. So it is true. This is an old wound that is being reopened by his current behavior. So whether that is a betrayal wound or an abuse wound that is being opened for you from your childhood, the most important part of this is recognizing that this is a wound. And oftentimes when I'm interacting with people, I will ask them, how old is this wound? And they will say, oh man, this goes back to when I was a kid. Yeah, this is a really old wound. It's being hurt right now, like things are happening right now that's making it really difficult for it to heal. At the same time, this wound has been around for a really, really long time. It's one of the things that I say is it's not the wound, though, that's causing you problems in your life. It's the stories that you believe about yourself because of the wound. So we can acknowledge, oh, this is a betrayal wound or this is an abuse wound or whatever. We can acknowledge that. But what do I end up believing about myself as a result? And there's three genres of core beliefs that go with that. The first genre is about our identity. I'm not enough. I'm too much of this. I'm not enough of that. I'm flawed. I'm defective. I'm bad. I'm awful. The second is about safety or trust. I can't depend on people. There's no one who's going to show up for me. The world is not safe. You can generalize it like all men are awful or all women are whatever, or you can make it more specific in those core beliefs. I can't trust my mother, for example, or whatever. And then the last is about power or powerlessness, usually is what the core belief is. I'm powerless. There's nothing that I can do. So as you sit with these wounds and you identify that your husband has engaged in some narcissistic behaviors, as you identified, and that reopens those wounds that maybe you've had for a really long time, what do you end up believing about yourself? I'm flawed. I'm defective. I can't do anything about this. And then one of the things that I have people do is I say, write down that core belief, look at it on the piece of paper. Ask yourself a very important question. Is that true? So I'm powerless. Is that true? Oh, it so feels like it is. I feel like it is so powerful. Yeah, but is it? And one of the things that I help people, or what I do with people, is I say just rate it on a scale of 1 to 7, with 7 being it's absolutely true and 1 being it's absolutely false. It's a little easier to do that than maybe the black and white yes or no. So I'm powerless. Is that true? It feels like it is. It feels like it's a 5. Well, wonderful. It's not a 7. So we now have a little bit of wiggle room to be able to say, okay, so where do you have power? Where do you have choice? And we start to challenge that core belief a little bit. And as we do, we break it apart and we move it down to 1 where, yes, I have power. I have the power to be able to say no. I have the power to leave. I have the power to go to therapy. I have the power to do whatever I need to do. And it changes how you feel about yourself. It doesn't do anything about his behavior, but in that process it helps you like remember, and that goes back to the core beliefs that we were talking before. I'm enough, I matter, I have power, I can choose to do something different. That little child of yours when you were a little kid didn't have any of those, but now you're an adult, and so you're able to say to that younger self, that wounded self, we have choice. I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to stick up for you, I'm going to protect you. It's a different now because I don't have to continue being sucked into those core beliefs any longer.
Like I actually do these things. My therapist helped me, and I, as an adult, can reach back to the 8-year-old little girl, and and help her, come alongside her, and let her. Yeah, I mean, like it's an intentional thing, but it is so healing, and it changed. It, like you said, changed the I have no power. I'm a victim of all of this. To I can reach back and let her know that it's going to be okay. So even if the circumstances aren't great. So, next question. Can you address how a series of serious early health issues and broken legs in adolescence and adult diabetes can lead a grown man to sex addiction?
Well, those are all lost wounds. Early health issues, what did you lose out on? What were you not able to participate from? Did you experience any kind of rejection because of that? Broken legs as an adolescent, what did that keep you from being able to do? Um, that's um, that's like that's some of those questions. Adult diabetes is another lost wound, so it goes again with those core beliefs of what do I end up believing about myself. And so one of the needs that is associated with loss is comfort. And sex is a really fabulous way of feeling comfort. And so when we believe that there's not a healthy way for me to be able to get that from others, or we believe that nobody would really want me, um, I end up turning to sex as a way of self-soothing that. And the irony is that it exacerbates those negative core beliefs that we already believe, that I'm not enough, there's something wrong with me. And so it exacerbates the wound rather than heals the wound, and then drives us into the cyclical nature where we continue to look for that kind of comfort, solace, support, affection in places that we're really never going to get it, but we keep believing that that must be where it is.
Okay. The next question is, for more understanding, my childhood wound comes from childhood neglect from being a sibling of a special needs brother and was the invisible child. I can so relate. So, Enid Gray wrote a book, Neglect, the Silent Abuser. She's going to be on Super Saturday Recovery Summit on In the Rooms in March 20th. I would invite you to watch that video. That book was like you already know it. Like I didn't know it. I didn't, I would have said everything was fine and our family was fine. So really important that you understand that that was a neglect wound. But I will shut up. That one banged.
It's a neglect and it's an abandonment. It's a different kind of abandonment. They, it's more probably more neglect. They were there, but they weren't. They were paying more attention to your brother than they were for you. But then again, what are the negative core beliefs that you then began to develop about yourself because of that. Well, I must not be important. I must not matter. And then this is the same person who was talking about the gaslighting husband. And later on, then, as you find your husband behaving in those ways, well, see, this is just evidence that I'm not enough, that I don't matter. And we use it, we collect it as data, as evidence that supports our negative core belief and makes us really see, well, see, this must be really true. I'm not worth anything. And so we challenge it.
So the next question, abandonment. He did not physically leave, but feeling of abandonment is very strong for me. The betrayed partner. We've been married for 40 plus years. D-Day was a year ago. He has been a sex addict our entire life together. I am 1 year since D-Day and still feel a sense of shock and disbelief.
So that's your wound of abandonment and betrayal too. That's your wound. I'm wondering if there's a question in there that you want me to address. I'm sure that the wound is incredibly intense and painful, and now you're probably trying to figure out, what in the world am I going to do? I've been married to this guy for 42 years, and just found out about this betrayal is cracked open wide. I didn't see it. I didn't know it. The abandonment is profound. So I'm really hoping that there's some self-care that you're engaging in as you are walking through this, and that you're not walking through it alone, because there are many individuals who have been where you are as a betrayed partner and can provide some comfort and support for you.
Yeah, I mentioned the betrayed partner group, the old lady posse. I actually subbed in on that one yesterday, and there were 57 people that were in that group, and they named it old lady posse, but it's people of a more mature nature, shall we say, that are in longer term relationships. My question for you too is, D-Day was a year ago, but I mean, like, what is he doing to heal? If he is doing, his work and you're starting to see differences, that's very different from somebody that has had discovery and he hasn't changed anything. Of course, then there's no safety, there's no trust, there's nothing to build on, because he still is not trustworthy. So I'm glad you're here. Please join. There's a betrayed partner group today at 12:30 Pacific time, and another one at 8:30 tomorrow morning Pacific time. So please join those, get support. You're not alone. Next question. As a recovering betrayed partner, I get that my SA spouse had some of the same attachment wounds, but it's making it extremely hard to forgive him, even though he's sober and working recovery. It's hard not to continue to push him away now because of the shame he's caused. What to do? And I hear that the betrayed partner has taken on the shame of his addiction. Is that what you're reading?
Yeah, that's what I would be curious about. Like, so I'm pushing him away now because of the shame he's caused. So I would imagine that there is shame as a betrayed partner. Like, a lot of times the reason why spouses don't want to tell anybody is twofold. Number one, I don't want anybody to think that I'm crazy because I still love my partner and I want to stay in the marriage. So what y'all will think I'm crazy if I stay. And second, I don't want anybody to think bad about my partner. I don't want them to think he's like some creepo or she is some creepo. I don't want anybody to think. And so that shame of the fear of what other people will think about you holds us back from reaching out and connecting. I'm hearing that it is hard to forgive him, and I get that. And that's going to be a journey that you are going to go on. And to be honest, you may never. There's not an expectation that you have to forgive. The interesting thing, as I've worked with forgiveness, is forgiveness is actually not about the other person. Forgiveness is really about the anger and the animosity and the energy that I continue to hold on to because you've hurt me. It's legitimate. Like, you have that. Forgiveness is about giving that away, for giving it away. And so it's not about pardoning him, like, it's death row and the governor picks up the phone and says, "You're pardoned." It's not about pardoning the behavior. It's about, I It's very strange. And there's a book called The Bonds That Make Us Free that goes into this in a little bit more detail, but it's about, man, I have not been the person I've wanted to be because of this anger and resentment, and it's led me to not be who I want to be, and as a result I've judged you and I've held you hostage and I've hurt you, and I don't want to do that anymore. And so I want to let that go. That doesn't mean that you stay in the relationship. It doesn't mean that you decide to, it has absolutely nothing to do with their behavior. It's about letting go of your pain inside and forgiving that away. And that's a journey. There's not a magic formula to help people do that. What I'm hearing is that you can recognize that he has wounds, which helps with the empathy, and so do you. And so part of that is when I'm working with couples, what I try to help the couples do is see each other's wounds and have compassion for those wounds. As I am able to see your wounds and you're able to see mine, it helps me have a better understanding of maybe why you did what you did. It still can hurt. It still can be a betrayal, but I also can comprehend, oh, that's why you did what you did. I'm also able to see, well, this is why I'm behaving the way that I'm behaving. Is there a way that as we heal these wounds, we can become better people, a better couple, a happier couple, that we can be united in ways that we've never ever experienced before? Is there a possibility of doing that? And I can only make that happen if I'm doing my work. I can't do that. I can't force my partner to change. I can't force my partner to do any of those kind of things, but I can work on me and remember that I'm worthy of love and belonging, that I'm worthy of forgiveness. I've made choices that are not great either. I'm worthy of those things. And I may choose to give those to you. I may choose not to. But I'm in a better place because I know that I have value and I'm loved.
I ditto what you said about forgiveness. It is so not about the other person. Early in recovery, major resentment towards somebody, major enough that I still remember it all these years later. And somebody said, "You're letting that person live rent free in your head." That made me extra angry because I was like, "No, you don't understand. It's their fault," and it was terribly painful to me. However, the freedom that I got from really working on on this almost killed me, I swear. I had to uh, pray good things for them, wish them blessings, and all of that. I'm like, all of these things. What is the last thing that I wanted to do in that moment? Was any of those things. And you know what? I've had to do that a number of times throughout my recovery. And every single time I'm willing to do that, it works. And I get the freedom from having that. I mean, like I spend inordinate amount of time in energy, mental energy. I mean, it's just, it sucks the life out of me and it turns me into who I don't want to be. So truly forgiveness for them is a gift for me. And it's a process, and it doesn't magically happen. And like, I have to repeat the process. It's, so there's not and it's okay. But the more I forgive them, the more free I am of whatever the damage from their behavior is. So, and like a lot of it, yeah, we're human beings, and some of us are way more broken than others. But at the end of the day, when we can have a little bit of compassion for each other, like even like you said, I saw his wounds. Like that's a little bit of compassion for it. So support for you. Work on healing your wounds, but just the lens of going like, what other stuff is going on, maybe be helpful for you. So next question. So a follow-up. I have been solidly rejected by my mother, my daughter-in-law, and now finding out my SA husband of almost 40 years almost or finally admitted he has never loved me. Only stayed for our son. Plus, I was always the last one picked, bullied all the way through high school. So, no acceptance of my whole life. I am the common denominator. Impossible to miss the message. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. We're
That's a
glad
lot
you're
of,
here.
yeah, that's a lot of rejection, a lot of betrayal, a lot of rejection, being told by your husband that he doesn't love you. Just so sad with you about that. Um, so that rejection wound is pretty profound. The message that goes with that is that I'm not wanted, um, that I'm not needed, nobody wants me, and I'm hoping that you can find ways to counter that message. And I'm hoping you can find ways where you can find acceptance from yourself and from those people around you who can love you wholeheartedly, unconditionally, because unconditional acceptance and love can go a long way in soothing that rejection wound for you.
Yeah, and I hear you're the common denominator within this. I'm a mother rejecting. I mean, that sounds like a very broken mom. A daughter-in-law. Who knows what's all going on there? So, so it feels like it feels like your entire world. I'm also going. There's a finite number of people within this. So connecting with people. One of my dear friends lost a family of choice person. Like this was a person that wasn't biologically related to him, but this person died of cancer last week, and it's like the relationship is so meaningful. It was someone he chose to be in relationship with. So so you get to choose, and I would invite you to find safe people and create healthy connections. So okay. Hello, my SLA partner decided to leave the relationship. He said he is not abandoning me because he needs to work in his recovery by his own. Okay. I can't even, okay. All right. But it does feel like abandonment to me. Yeah. Could I recognize this as abandonment wound? Any suggestions? Thank you. I'm sorry, but when the lips are moving and saying, I'm not really abandoning you as I'm walking out the door, I'm sure that makes it okay.
I don't know your whole situation, man. So or female, I don't know what you are. I don't know your situation. It's interesting. As I was talking about that abandonment wound being stirred up, there's a person that I've hired to help me with some stuff. And for the last 2.5 weeks, the person hasn't been showing up to our meetings. They have been staying in contact with me and explaining that they're going through some of their own personal stuff. But I'm not kidding when I say that like stirred up my abandonment wound really bad. Like you weren't there when we were supposed to meet. And I was talking about it with a friend of mine, and he said, hey, he's not abandoning you. He's still connecting with you. He's telling you, hey, I'm not in a great place right now, and I need a little bit of time to work through things. So he's still engaging with you. What he's failed to do is kept his commitment to be at the meeting that we were supposed to meet at. That's what he's failed to do. And I thought that's a really interesting perspective. He hasn't abandoned the relationship. He's clearly still engaged with me. He just didn't come at the agreed time that we were supposed to meet. I don't know if that's the situation with this person. I don't know if this person is still connecting with you in any way or not, or that they just literally like walked out and said, hey, I got to go work on my recovery for a while. I'll be back later. I don't know. I can imagine that that's really painful. Even when he didn't show up for my meeting, that was really painful for me. And so it absolutely is an abandonment wound that's being hit, because that's what you were asking. Is this an abandonment wound? It absolutely is. How you want to handle that is entirely up to you. For me, I could say, well, I wish you well. Please don't come back. Uh, uh, you know, I could do that. I could say, well, I wish you well. And when you are done, come back and we'll see where things are. Like I have some choices about how I'm going to respond to what's going on. With my person, I could share, hey, you not coming to your meeting with me really affected me in a profound way. I could have that dialogue. I could choose not to. I have choices about how I'm going to respond from an adult, healthy perspective, not a little wounded kid perspective. I have the choice, and so do you. So it's painful. It feels like a huge loss. It feels like abandonment. And in the end, you get to decide, how am I going to respond to that? He's going to do what he's going to do. How am I going to respond to that in a way that serves me, is in my best interest, and aligns with my value system, and is something that will help me feel healthy and grounded myself.
Well said. I just have reactions. So, okay. I'm like reading. Yeah. So here's the deal, everybody. I answer the phone a lot, and I answer the phone, and I get a lot of partners who say he says blah blah blah, and my brain is going, he's lying. When and addicts. I mean, at our treatment program, we our clinical director says, tell the truth and tell it faster. Addicts lie. I have partners that say he's going to lie to you, and I go, yes, he will. So that's where, so I'm sorry, I sound jaded. I'm actually very hopeful, because recovery changes everything. Real recovery, not just abstinence. So, okay. Next, this is a long one. So I'm a gay man, and I have a sexual relationship with my best friend who identifies as straight. We have had a chemsex relationship, but our bond is very strong, and our friendship is very important to both of us. However, during the COVID summer, we were able to spend a lot of time together. He thought he might be able to be in a relationship with me, but after 2 months, he told me that he is straight and he just can't give me what I wanted. I lived in fantasy that he would come around and discover his feelings for me were stronger and more important to him than he could understand. He even called me after beginning a relationship with a woman that he was miserable because he loved us both and couldn't understand what to do and why he felt what he felt. We continued the chemsex during this time, but the woman found out and it stopped. I'm working on a program now, yay, and have 25 days clean of sex, love, drugs, yay. He wants his friend back without benefits. Can we? Can I set good boundaries, or am I in denial?
Well, thank you for being so vulnerable here, man. Um, and I don't know a whole lot about your situation, so I can't tell whether you are in denial or not. A different question is that relationship healthy? Is that I'm sure you love him and you care about him, and he's been honest with you about the fact that he's straight, so he's not interested in that, and yet engaged in sex with you. So that's got to be a very strange mixed message for you. I'm also hearing that there's a part of where there's drugs and sex involved, and so one of the things that I'm wondering is whether both of you happen to be addicts and are engaging in ways to try and get your needs met that are maybe not healthy. And so, although he might be straight as straight can be, when he's, I don't know if the sex with you was always involved with chemicals as well, um, but if he is engaging in that may be his way of trying to get some of his needs met, even though he's identifying as straight. And so he's figuring out, hey, I actually can't be in a relationship with you. It sounds like he has some boundaries now. He's like, I want to be your friend, but I don't want to do that anymore. Those are some things that you two are going to have to work out. But the bottom line is this a healthy relationship for you? Can't speak whether it's a healthy relationship for him or not, but is it going to help you maintain your sobriety? Is it going to help you connect with who you really are and live congruently with your value system, or is it going to hijack and sabotage it? I can't answer that for you. That's some soul searching that you're going to have to look through.
Yeah, and my big concern beyond the chemsex stuff it would be, are you always going to be hopeful that when you're with your friend that it's going to be different? Like if you're hanging on to like if your brain is going to be sidetracked too, but maybe this time Dr. Rob has talked about on his webinar a couple times, he talked about a relationship where, like he really thought if he just did this or whatever, then this person was going to love him. And finally his therapist was like, this person can't ever be there for you like you want them to be. And then he realized that wasn't the right person for him. And I'm just sharing this as an example. And so then he had a posse that helped him create a here's who you can date, here's who you can't date. And all the people he wanted to date, they all said no. And the one person that he was like, I'm not going to keep dating him, they were like, that's the one you need to keep dating. And they've been married 20 years. So that's the Reader's Digest version of why having a group support to help you identify who's good to be in your life, not just from a romantic relationship, but even friends, who's going to be a supportive person in recovery, help you continue to grow your recovery, I think is critical. So, okay, next question. What is a good resource for identifying core beliefs I created resulting from trauma? I'm thinking your Finding Peace workbook would be a great source.
That would be a great place. Chapter 2 is all about identifying what the core beliefs are. It gives you some tools of how to challenge those as well. So if you want to check it out, it's on Amazon, the Finding Peace workbook by me.
By you. And somebody said, I already had childhood shame. And I mean, I think these wounds, and maybe I'm wrong, but don't you think, well, you would know, it feels like all these wounds like are deep and old.
They are. And again, it's the stories that are connected to them that is what really causes us the damage. Because, there's been times that maybe you've been rejected, like somebody says, get out of here, and it doesn't bother you at all. It's like, fine, okay, you're crazy, whatever. Like, or somebody walks out of your life and you're like, thank heavens, I'm so glad that. And why? Well, because there's a different story being told inside about you than before. But shame, when it connects to these wounds, is what causes us the most pain. So we've all had childhood shame. People have shamed us, um, have created some of those things. We've had some of that, and then do we continue to carry it on? And do we find ways to actually amplify it? And the work of Brene Brown and all of her work around shame really talks about how we can become shame resilient to those messages and find a way to say, I'm not buying into that anymore.
So the next question, accepting and rationalizing disrespect and abuse with the knowledge that the connection is off balance addicted has some mental issues due to childhood abuse. Years later, after accepting and rationalizing, I felt lost. I'm no longer in touch with this person. And after all these years of allowing this treatment in the name of understanding, I'm exhausted, hurt, and confused at how my loving intention turned into such self-abandonment.
I'm number one. I'm sad with you that you have identified that, and I'm also proud of you for working through and identifying some of that. You said a key thing: self-abandonment. When we talk about these wounds of loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and abuse, really what causes us probably the most pain as grown-ups is we end up inflicting those wounds on ourselves. I can be so mad at my partner or my friend or my boss for exacerbating those wounds on me. I can be, and it's legitimate, like your anger is legitimate. But then when I look in the mirror and I realize, man, I put myself down a lot. I reject myself a lot. I abandon myself from taking care of myself by eating healthy and exercising. I don't do that. When I'm in a funk, I just give up. Like, that's abandoning me. So when I start to identify, wow, I've been doing that to myself. I don't want to do that to myself anymore because I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of belonging. I'm going to work on that. So there's another book that I wrote called A Year of Self-Love. It's also available on Amazon, and it's a daily activity, one small thing that you can do to start loving on yourself. It's very simple. There's 365 entries in there, and that may be something that you would find helpful. It's just, what are some very small ways that I can start accepting myself being present for myself, showing up for myself, honoring myself.
I'm writing that one down too. So, and actually, you just kind of mentioned it because there's a whole bunch of stuff in the chat. So, always know if you're joining us, if you want questions answered, putting them in the Q&A, it's a lot easier. But there was one back there that said some good self-care practices, and you mentioned exercise, eating healthy. It said besides meetings and webinars. So, exercise, eating healthy, sleeping right. What other things do you think of as I think connecting with people like that are the good for me people, even beyond meetings and, like being in connection instead of just in here.
Think about it like think about 5 areas: physical, social, social, spiritual, mental, and emotional. Those 5 areas. There's things that you can do in each one of those that can be self-care. So if you're a spiritual person, maybe if you are religious or believe in God, then you would pray and making sure that you're spending time with that. If you're not, you're finding ways to do meditation, listening to uplifting music that makes you happy. Physical, I'm going to eat right, get enough sleep. I'm going to not eat sugar. I'm going to exercise. Social, I'm going to reach out to some people. I'm going to call a friend today. I'm just giving you some ideas. Emotional, I'm going to, physical could be I'm going to take a bubble bath, whatever. Emotional, I'm going to do something that I love. I'm going to go get up in the morning and watch the sunrise and just let myself feel the joy. That like covers like 3 of those things right there.
Mhm.
And then mental, I'm going to learn something. I'm going to do something to learn and grow. Though just finding something in each of those categories that you enjoy are ways of self-care.
Right. And I think it's really easy to let those things slip, like you said, when you get into a funk, to have it be like those things go by the wayside. And if we commit to those things and make it intentional, then, like I do a meditation app, and I realized this morning and I haven't done this in 170 some days, but today I ran out the door on a run because I was in a hurry. I had to go to an appointment, all of this stuff. And yeah, I'm sitting waiting in the car because it's COVID, and I'm like, I didn't do my meditation, so I'm sitting there doing it, and I thought, oh wow, what a shift in my day by not doing the good for me thing first thing in the morning.
Mm.
So
Mm.
there was a question in the chat. I have a question. I have a manager who is extremely motivated by money and overly materialistic, who grew up poor. And I am opposite of that. I have a hard time trusting him. He wants to monitor my work at work and drinks heavily. I'm the opposite as well. I don't really, I really need this job and worry about our personalities clashing. I try to see the good in him and to do what he says, but how do I shake off the feeling he is out to get me?
Well, is he out to get you? Is that a true statement? It's a yes or no, or on a scale of 1 to 7. If it is true, of course you're gonna feel unsafe there. I'm hearing that you need the job. I get that. Right, finding a job right now is like nearly impossible, no matter where you live. So you have a job, um, but you're not happy there, and it feels like it's a toxic relationship. So part of that is again connecting with, well, is it true? Is he out to get me? I know there might be some gaslighting going on with that, but is this a healthy relationship for me? And if it's not, I'm not suggesting you quit today, but it may be I'm going to start looking for another job, and when I find another job, I'm going to leave. Um, I'm not telling you what to do, but I hear that you have compassion for the guy. At the same time, his behavior may be something that you're not willing to tolerate much longer. And so, again, that's the self care. What can I do to make sure I have the means to provide for myself and I work in a place that's healthier for me?
And I wonder, I don't know. I mean, because it sounds like he's a heavy drinker. There may be some bigger challenges there, but is there an opportunity to have a conversation about, what are your expectations? Like, I want to make sure I'm clear on your expectations and how I can move forward in a different way that is meaningful for you and me. And so, is there a way to have a conversation about it? And just take address the elephant in the room. If you're feeling it, it's that's yeah, yeah, it would be an opportunity. I don't know what will happen with him. So how do you change core beliefs? Is it one of your if Is it in one of your books? Which one? Not just shame, but I'm not capable as others, different, etc. As an addict, alcoholic, how do I know I am getting healthy thinking without just going into denial? Fear of denial of my reality, very real.
Thank you. So there is a difference between shame and the core beliefs. The core beliefs began to be written on in our nervous system as the wounds were being created. And if you think about it from a child perspective, kids are very egocentric. And so when these wounds of neglect or abandonment or abuse or whatever were happening, they don't have the capacity to say, you know what, my dad is a freaking alcoholic and he probably needs to go to inpatient treatment, get some help, and then he needs to work a program. Like, the kid doesn't have the ability to do that. All the kid thinks is, well, there must be something wrong with me. I must be a horrible person that my dad has to drink all the time. So those core beliefs get wired into our nervous system. And then what shame does is it amplifies what we already believe about ourselves. So shame is a defense mechanism that gets activated when the wound is hit. You asked where can you go to change those core beliefs? It is again in chapter 2. The whole workbook is about how you change those core beliefs. But some forms of therapy that also help with that is EMDR. EMDR is really helpful. So if you have a therapist in your area that knows how to do that, that's actually pretty profoundly quick way of changing some of those core beliefs. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is another way that some people use to challenge those core beliefs. Internal family systems is another way where we we do wound care around some of this trauma. So there's some modalities of therapy that we can use to help change those core beliefs, as well as just like writing it out, journaling, and those kind of things.
I think that was the end of the questions. Anybody else have we've got a few minutes left. So anybody else have any questions? I'm trying to scan through the chats and make sure I didn't miss any questions in there. So somebody posted, I'd like to say that forgiveness does not need to alter any of your relational boundaries. I think that is absolutely true. I think anything forgiveness may help you feel more secure in your boundaries. And I think
So the one person asked how will EMDR change your core beliefs? So what EMDR does is the short version is it rewires the way that you think about a particular traumatic event. So like I said, we have these wounds. EMDR doesn't usually use that language, but the same thing. You have these wounds, and then you have these connected negative core beliefs that are attached to them. And then it causes you a bunch of distress in your body. So what we do with EMDR is we're stimulating the right and left side of your brain. The level of distress starts to go down, and we want it to go down like completely gone. That's what we're hoping for. And then we identify, well, you still believe that core belief about yourself now, or is there a positive core belief that fits better now? And then what we do is we do some more bilateral stimulation back and forth, and we lock that new positive core belief in as it connects to that traumatic event, so that when you go back and think about that traumatic event, number one, it doesn't cause you distress anymore, and number two, you're like, yeah, I'm amazing, I'm powerful, I'm good enough. That's how it does it, and it does it in a fairly rapid way. And nobody can explain how EMDR works, actually. It's just we found that it does. So that's how it does it, though, is that we reduce the distress, and then we lock in a new positive core belief with that memory.
And it is amazing. I've been the recipient of it. It super helps. And like, as you said that, I was like, oh, like I know what my positive core belief is. Like it pops in my head. And I was thinking, oh, that's popped into my head a few times lately. So I can only assume that the other thing was being a little triggered, but no, this is what it said.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even realized that. So thank you. So
you're welcome.
The next one is, yes, is shame a defense mechanism?
Shame is a defense mechanism. When we're talking to the shadows of shame, the judge, the rebel, the royal, when you really start to talk to them a little bit and you ask why they're here, they will inevitably tell you they are here to help you. They do a crappy job of helping, by the way, but they're here to help you. They are trying to defend against your wounds being hurt again. So, simply said, the judge wants you to be perfect because the judge believes if you're perfect, then you'll never be rejected again, for example. So, it becomes a defense mechanism that we use then to deal with rejection. Well, I wasn't perfect enough. I should have tried harder, blah, 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 blah. But once I'm able to say, wow, that's actually not helping, it's okay that I'm flawed and make mistakes, I'm still worthy of love and belonging, the judge stops defending, I'm actually able to get my needs met in a healthier way, and it works better. So shame is absolutely a defense mechanism that we've been using to deal with the pain.
If you have not picked up, this is a shameless plug for Troy, but really it's just giving resources. It like these authors, they make, as Rob says, like 12 cents on a book. So he's not going to get ultimately rich on you buying a book,
No.
but you can have healing. So Finding Peace workbook. And I am going to add the Year of Self-Love to our website as another resource too. So if you have missed any of the books or anything on sexandrelationshiphealing.com under resources, you'll see books and you will see a link to Finding Peace as well. So, and then somebody did ask about EMDR, and I did note, I typed it in. It works even online. Like my therapist has, like she has me tapping, and so you can do it even online, even in COVID. A good EMDR therapist can really help with that. So get support that you need. Thank you for being here, Troy. Thank you all for being here and asking such great questions. Troy will be back in a month. I'm going to commit to talking to him about having the women's group. He does do a men's group on Friday mornings, and he alternates with Garrett Irby on Mondays as well. So if you are a male and have not joined the drop-in groups yet, I would invite you to join Troy's. On any of them on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, you'll see that. And then the betrayed partner groups are on that too. And we're also talking about having a women's group that talks about attachment wounds. So I commit to you that I will be reaching out to schedule a time to talk. So I won't abandon you. You won't abandon me.
I didn't feel abandoned by you. It's all good.
All right. Talk to you later. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.